The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bitten by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayette. I am your host. Big thanks to Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, dear gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another fun-filled show. Today's guest is Dave Mader, who is a founding member of the United Federation of Podcasts, a group whose banner we fall under. I fell into this group through Davin, my co-host on the X-Rated X-Men Anime Review Show, and through that, I found this sort of community that welcomed me with open arms into their banner, and my show has fallen into one of their programming, which is great. Great group of folks, and creating some quality content. My relationship with Dave has mostly just been talking to him on other podcasts when I've been a guest on his or others. And as such, I thought it'd be fun to have him on and get to know him, his life, and his passion for podcasting, and among other things that he discusses in the episode. Does a lot of, I'm not going to tell you. You listen to the episode, you listen to the conversation, and then you learn a little more about Dave. I'm not giving you any spoilers here. You got to listen to the whole show to get the whole deal. Now let's listen to the intro. As people often do with podcasts. Mostly I just want to listen to the show for the intro or, the MeUndies ads, which I don't have yet, unfortunately, but maybe someday soon. Going on vacation soon, which I'm very excited about. My wife and I will be visiting Vancouver, British Columbia, which is a part of Canada I haven't been to before. I was having a conversation with someone recently about how I've not been over much of Canada, and then upon thinking about it, mostly due to wrestling, I've seen quite a bit. Nova Scotia, obviously, New Brunswick, PEI. I've been to Newfoundland and Labrador. I've been to Quebec. I've been to different parts of Quebec. Been to Toronto. I've been to Winnipeg, where in different communities there. So once I'm hitting BC, I think all I got left is Alberta and Saskatchewan, and then I got all of the core provinces, and then I'm off to the territories. I got 3 of those to hit. So, and I will someday. That would be awesome. I'm excited to see part of Canada I haven't seen before, and visit some family there as well. So it's going to be a really good time. And while I am there, I do hope and do believe that I'll have an episode recorded in the can that will air at the normally scheduled time. So there should be no break in your regular scheduled podcasting program here at the Graphic Histories Podcast, and I'll let you know who my guest is at the end of this episode. It's pretty exciting. I'm very, very pumped for this particular guest. Very cool person and artistic talent for sure. The Local Love Awards are coming up here in Truro. I've been nominated. This is the 3rd time I've been nominated for an award. I did not win the previous 2 years. I feel like this might be my year, maybe. I lived in Truro for 20 years now. Though I'm not from here, I've been here more than I haven't been here. Meaning, it means a lot to me that I found a community here. I mean, obviously, I got a wife and a home and lots of friends, and the community has sort of accepted me. I do an awful lot within it, be it wrestling or trivia or volunteer work or my work with Community Credit Union or the SPCA or all that sort of stuff. But I'm certainly a proud member of this community, and although I don't need an award to feel like I have a home here, it certainly is nice to have a reminder that the community accepts me and appreciates me as well. So nothing's better than a shiny award to do that. So yeah, that might have to be my acceptance speech if I win. So I'll let you know down the line if that happened or not. Hopefully so. But it'll probably be the episode after next, because I think I have to record that very soon in order to have it done in time to be ready for when I'm gone. So I don't think I'll be able to give you an update until the episode after next, but I will certainly let you know. So I guess without much further ado, we can just get into today's episode, which is with Dave Mader, founder of the United Federation of Podcasts and host of a bevy podcast, many of which we will talk about in the episode. Here he is, Dave Mader.
Is this working?
It's funny. I was thinking to myself when I was setting this up. I was like, a lot of the guests I have in the show, it's like a night. Sometimes a nightmare to get them connected through Zoom. And I'm like, oh, well, Dave's an old hat at this. He'll have no problem connecting.
I didn't expect to, but it's been a minute since I've used it, so it's clearly. And I kept saying your app's out of date. I'm like, okay, then update it, and then it just wouldn't. And so I don't know. Eventually, I had to join through the browser.
Oh, really?
Seems to have worked. So.
It does give a nice panoramic view of your room, though. I don't think I've seen it in such lovely scope before. There's a lot of stuff.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's I got the fishbowl camera or the fish lens.
Oh yeah.
Fish
okay.
lens.
Widens it out.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. Well, actually, mostly done now. But I added the Oren yesterday from the Never Ending Story. So.
Very nice. That's a classic. I like the Muppet too in the corner there. That's sweet.
Yeah, I got that at FAO Schwartz in New York City at the Muppet workshop before they closed that.
Oh, really? That is so cool.
Yeah, it was almost 10 years ago. I think it was over 10 years ago, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is this like your bed? Is this like a spare bedroom?
Spare bedroom, yeah. So my wife and I, we got the 2-bedroom apartment, and so this, my son mostly, this was his room for many years, but then he kind of grew up and lives with his mom most of the time. So when we both started working from home full time, we had to figure it out, and so I started working in here. Jane was working in that room, so our bedroom. So
I was going to say, if this is your bedroom, you have a very understanding wife.
Well, she lets me put all my stuff here,
yes.
Unless it's this wall, which you can't see, but there's one wall over there that she sees as she passes, down the hallway, and she's like, "You can't put anything on that wall. I don't want to see it." So
it's funny. My wife. This is my office, as you can see. There's gremlins and lots of weird shit around. I got there's Infinity Gauntlet over here. There's lights up. There's all these replica gremlins. There's some giant movie posters.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, and I have like similar. I have all this stuff you can't see on this side too. But
a friend of mine is a pretty talented painter, and he did as a gift that portrait of me as the creature from Frankenstein in the play I did over here.
Right.
There's the fawn from Pan's Labyrinth over there.
Oh, so, beauty!
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, those gremlins are really awesome. Like
they're the replicas. They're life-size replicas that are based on the original puppets. They're not quite as elaborate as those would have been, but I do have one behind my computer as well, which is like a model kit, so it doesn't really move. You can't, but it's
oh wow,
yeah, a friend of mine who does effects for movies did that up for me, so it's super cool.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of both those movies. Maybe the second one and more in some ways.
I agree. I've had this conversation with many people. I have two friends one who's never seen either of them, and I'm incredibly disappointed in him. He's a big movie guy, and the other who hasn't seen the second one. So I'm trying to get the first one to see the first one so that we can all watch the second one together. Because to me, I think it's one of the most, like, I'm a huge Joe Dante fan, and it's such a subversive, fun, ridiculous movie that sort of parodies itself. Like, it's like a parody of horror movies, but also a parody of Gremlin movies, which is amazing because there's only one. Like it's not like they're skewering an entire genre. It's like there's one movie before it that they have to skewer, and they spend an entire movie essentially doing that. Which is
right.
Great. Yeah.
John Glover's in that one. Right?
Yeah. He's Clamp, who is supposed to be. He's supposed to be Donald Trump, like an analog for Trump, because they have like Clamp Towers and all this stuff. But I guess he was kind of supposed to be a villain in the movie. But Dante said, like, during filming, John Glover is just so likable as the character that they sort of shifted it and put the evil focus back on the Gremlins more than him. But Christopher Lee's in it, Hulk Hogan's in it,
Robert Picardo.
Yes, Robert Picardo. Well, he's in almost everything that Joe Dante does. They're good friends. Like he's in Matinee, he's in Inner Space, he's in The Howling. He's in a lot of those movies. Mostly whenever he was free, and Dante would have him in his movies, in some role or here or there.
Well, I'm a fan, obviously.
Yes, of course. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being on the show, man. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having me. When you said you were looking for guests, I was like, I'd love to go on Andre's show and get to talk to him because, we've chatted here and there, but it's been, brief. And usually we're talking about X-Men or something like that. So
yeah, I feel like most of my experience of getting to know you is just listening to Davin and Chris be incredibly mean to you on their movie podcast.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I wasn't quite prepared for that. Although they were already heckling me leading up to that podcast.
Because you
And
chose the American president as your movie?
I did. Okay. The theme was politics. And, I took poli-sci in university. And so I was like, okay, I can go into the politics round. And I originally wanted to do The Contender, which is a great film, starring, it's got Gary Oldman and, many others. And I was like, this would be a great political movie. And Davin's like, no, it's the year 2000 and it has to be.
I told him he had to get rid of that. I said, let your third guest at least pick what they want.
I was like, it's just over the line, man. It's just barely. He's like, doesn't matter. So I was like, so I kind of knew that he would hate the American president. So I picked that instead in retaliation because it's just, but I also really love that movie for other reasons. And so we did the politics one and Davin picked Dr. Strangelove. And I was just like,
politics movie.
I'm like, this movie's not really about politics. He's like, it doesn't matter. It's a better movie. And I was just like, is that what we're measuring here? So.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of movies that deal with like actual politics in a way that like, Dr. Strangelove is a great movie. I would not call it a political movie.
Right.
I mean, it's more of a satire of I guess it's a satire of like, war and all that sort of stuff and the people that make those decisions, but it's not quite the same. But no, and I was like, I'm always like kind of going to bat for you. Like the other night, even on the X-Men podcast, I was saying you're gonna be a guest, and he was like, ask him about the American president ever, and I was like, leave him alone for that. I'm like, obviously the guy likes movies, like good heartfelt movies. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm
a fan of Aaron Sorkin's writing style.
Yeah, for sure. Me too, actually.
And I just I like in that movie how there's like they're actually trying to pass a bill and they're having to compromise and trade off on things. And Davin's main issue was that it was too much, too American patriotic. I think too much of
Well, it's hard to make an American movie about the American president that's supposed to be a romantic comedy and make the American president unlikable. Like what are you supposed to do? Like, there's lots of movies. I'm sure there's lots of other movies from other genres in other countries that make the American president out to be a dick. In some cases, they're probably right.
Yeah,
but,
and the movie's very much a product of its specific time. I explained to him, I'm like, it's coming from a time when it's the end of the 20th century, and it's like this reverence for the president, and it's also like the time Bill Clinton was in office. And what if like a good-looking single guy on TV wanted to date a woman? How would the American public react to it? It would be very different now. But
we're sort of probably going to get some of that with our current prime minister, being that he's on the market.
That's true.
Whether
That's
he makes
true.
it through the next election, who knows? I guess
we'll see. It's not looking good right now in the polls.
No, it certainly is not, especially for someone who's not quite as leaning toward the conservative side of things as I am. But hey, I mean, the legal pendulum the political pendulum swings. It just seems like it swings one way and then swings really hard the other way. So we just get more and more extremes from either side all the way up the ladder until
I agree too. Yeah, it's hard to.
I guess I don't know when it stops, but
well, they said politics should be about finding not truth, but kind of like compromise and middle ground and sort of what will work. So anyway,
I feel like the system is kind of broken now because it's not even about that. Like our system's slightly different, but like the American system, it just seems like it's not about finding common ground at all. Like if there's a bill that they're like, hey, here's a bill that the liberals are going to introduce or bring in, or Democrats are going to bring in that's going to cure cancer, and then the Republicans will be like, no, we're blocking it. It's like
because then they'll
cancer, like,
for curing
they
cancer.
want it, so fuck them. We're not doing that.
Wish it.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. It'll make them look good. So no, everyone can die of cancer.
Well, I don't disagree. Yeah, it's and holding on to power or obtaining power becoming the main objective, which is the sad part, because I don't know if it started off like that exactly, but it's definitely become
I
that
feel
too.
like we kind of idealize the people that founded our respective countries in a way that's like, we have no frame of reference to know what truly was said or what truly was going on,
Or
besides what's
intended.
written in history books, which of course is going to make the people that write them, or are in charge of making sure they get distributed to the schools, make those people look good. But I
Mhm.
know what you're saying. It's one of those things that, yeah, I don't know, the system. I don't think we're going to fix it per se, but
Well, I hope so. I always hope for improvement, but then I think it comes down to the public, and I think we kind of get our strings pulled on by these politicians, and really it's supposed to work the other way around. So
yeah, I think it was
hopefully.
was it Douglas Adams who had he's like one of my favorite writers, but he had a quote that said something along the lines like, nobody who's capable of becoming president should be. Like, if you're by the time you get to being president of the United States, like, you owe so many people so much, or had to do so many deals, or become so morally corrupt to get to that level of success. I mean, there's a reason why sociopaths tend to be the heads of corporations, because they don't care about stepping on people to get there. So
Exactly. And I think that a lot of that's true in politics. And I think it's just, how do you get how do you get your best and brightest to even want to run? Because you got to be willing to, have your name dragged through the mud and
oh yeah.
just, deal with all these kind of stuff. And truly altruistic people don't usually, subject themselves to it. If they want to give back to the world, they're probably not going to do it through politics.
Yeah,
Um,
it's probably smaller
so,
scale, like they donate to charities or volunteer soup kitchens and that sort of stuff.
yeah, or they do it some other way, right? So
Yeah, cool.
philanthropy.
So you're a
Yeah.
born Nova Scotian, a native Nova
I
Scotian?
am. I am a born Nova Scotian. My parents, are from Halifax, grew up there. My family, long time in Nova Scotia. I can trace back my Nova Scotian ancestry quite a bit. Along with Davin, who I, of course, share a lineage with. We're second cousins.
Okay, so
So
your parents were first cousins? Is that how that works?
our mothers were first cousins.
Okay.
So his mom is 10 years older than my mom. But
Also,
yeah,
there's
like
quite a difference in age there.
quite a bit different age, but because so his grandfather was very close to my grandmother, and so when his grandfather I don't know if you know that, but his grandfather died very young,
I didn't.
in an accident where like a telephone pole fell on him. They were hanging the telephone line down in like the valley, and
Oh, he's a linesman?
and so yeah, his mother was only Davin's mother was only like maybe a year old or something, and at the time, so she never knew him either. But when he passed away, my grandmother made an active, effort to be in his mom's life, and then when Davin and his sister were born, in their lives as well. So I would often see like photos of Davin like around my grandmother's house when I was a kid. I go, who is this kid, and why is he got a picture next to mine? I would say, oh, this is Davin, and
Usurper.
yeah, who's this usurper? Yeah,
Yeah, who's getting all the
but
candy that's rightfully mine?
yeah, so we had met a couple times as kids, here and there, but it was not very long. And then he kind of noticed I was doing the Star Trek podcasts, and so we kind of connected.
Oh, so you guys weren't
Along the way.
really like close growing up. It only came later.
No, we only met like 3 times, we think. But it was always pleasant and
Yeah.
good exchange, but it was usually brief. And so yeah, we only saw each other a couple times. But when he said, "Hey, like I saw you're doing a Star Trek podcast," and I said, "Oh yeah, I remember you," and so we started talking.
Well, that's good. I know that totally gives me some insight into that relationship, because I just assumed, based on how familiar you guys seem, I just assumed you were like childhood friends all the way through.
Yeah, not quite, but
Love
kind of
of
wish we
Star
were
Trek has
now.
brought you. Well, it's never too late, right?
Yeah, it brought us together. We're only a year apart in age, so looking back, I was like, oh, we should have tried to be closer earlier. But it was only based on when we are going to encounter each other, which was basically a couple times my grandmother invited us all. I think the last time I had seen him before a couple, at pandemic was at my grandmother's funeral. And that was like 13 years earlier. So it had been a long time since I had talked or seen him, but
It's funny.
I'm
Devin
glad I
has
did.
that sort of effect on people. Like, I ran into him just once at a convention, the Dartmouth Comic Arts Festival, where my table was beside his table, and I chatted with him throughout the day, and then I just never really met him, had anything to do with him again for, I don't know, like a decade. maybe not quite that long. It was quite a while, like 8 years maybe. And then like all of a sudden out of the blue, I just get a message that's like, "Hey, we should do a podcast together." And I was like, "Okay," and I just sort of took a jump at it, and here we are. So,
Yeah, no, he is really good with people, and I put him in charge of the Live Long and Podcast diplomatic corps, making the overtures to get people
he's
from
good at
other.
that. He got some
He
people
is.
for my show too. So.
Yeah, and interviews, and hopefully, we're trying to get some Star Trek actor alumni to hopefully, do some interviews, and non-actors as well. We're hoping to get them on the channel. So, yeah, I'm glad Davin can help with that because it's just legwork, of course, too.
For sure, yeah. No, there's a lot of work involved with trying to run a podcasting network as I'm learning. I feel like I'm sort of on the outskirts of this. Like, I'm involved, obviously, because I'm here and I'm happy to be here. But I'm also like so busy, and sometimes you guys are like, the chat just blows up on my phone. And I don't have time to read this novel that started yesterday. But usually it has nothing to do with me anyway. So it's like whatever. But I'm so happy to be on board.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes especially if it's Davin and Murphy, because we have like our our federation of podcast chat, but then there's also like the Live Log and podcast chat, which is like our, that's specific to that. And one morning I woke up and I had like 100 messages, and it was Davin and Murphy arguing about something that happened on Hold Up. Like, and I was just like, what is this? Like, you were arguing about some movie or something. And I don't know.
So it was like, were you like, I'm assuming Star Trek was always a big part of your world growing up.
Yeah, like I can remember my dad sitting me down for the premiere of Next Generation, 1987. I was only about 4, and I'd seen original series, but he was excited. He's like, "Oh, Star Trek's back on TV," and I was definitely exposed to original series quite a bit. And then, at first I started when I was 4 years old. I didn't quite get into Next Gen right away. It wasn't maybe until a couple of years later when it was in syndication.
A bunch of peaceful conflict resolution wasn't grabbing your attention.
As a 4-year-old, I was still trying to grasp. I'm like, I thought this is. I was like, what the hell's a generation? And I was like, well, shouldn't the captain of this Enterprise be like the son of the Enterprise's last captain? And
narratively, that wouldn't be interesting, but
yeah. And so I was like, there's no Spock. I didn't quite get it yet, but it took a couple of years. So yeah,
robot instead. I mean, you pretty much had the same thing. it's like Spock's like Data's like the Spock you have at home. It's like we can't afford Spock. We have Spock at home.
Right. And LeVar Burton having been on Reading Rainbow at the time too, like there was that connection. I even remember my mom watching E.T. and John Tesh doing that whole segment on when he played the Klingon in one of the episodes, sticking Worf with the pain sticks on the holodeck. Right. So it's been in my life my entire time, like as far back as I can remember, pretty much. It's both my parents being fans. My mother loved The Voyage Home, the Star Trek, all the Star Trek movies, but my parents definitely huge influence there to start. And then I just kept going with it throughout the the 90s and all that, especially. So
excellent. So I got not an argument but a discussion with Davin, because listen to the Hold Up podcast, and they're talking about the director of Time After Time, who his name escapes me right now, but he directed Wrath of Khan
Nicholas Meyer.
Yeah, Meyer, right? That's right. And he was saying like he's like, yes, the guy, like he also wrote like the fifth one, the fifth Star Trek movie.
You mean the sixth one? Or who wrote the fifth?
No, who directed the? Oh yeah, Shatner directed the fifth one, didn't he?
Yeah, and he partly wrote it too.
But he said The Voyage Home, I think they mentioned, but then I was like, you guys don't mention that he wrote directed Wrath of Khan, like what most people consider the best Star Trek movie ever. And then Davin's like, it's not the best. And I'm like, you think The Voyage Home is better? And he was like, or like he thought the fifth, what's the fifth one called? The one that
Final Frontier.
Yes, the Final Frontier. He thought the Final Frontier was better. And I was like, you're insane. I was like,
no, it's not better than Wrath of Khan. I'd say Wrath of Khan is not my favorite Star Trek movie, even though it's you can call it technically the best. But I think Star Trek 6, the one I got the poster for right
that might
here,
be the one he liked the best. Actually, it might have been 6.
Yeah, that's the first one I ever saw in the theater. I remember my mom taking me to see it in 91. that was like a really awesome movie. I think I hold that up as my favorite. And then the Voyage
Meyer
Home.
directed that one. He directed 6.
He did.
Yes. Okay.
He directed 6 and 2, and I think he was a part writer
4.
on 6.
He wrote 4, I think. 2.
Did he?
I think so.
I'd have to look that up. Star Trek. I don't think he did, but Trek 4. I think that was Leonard Nimoy who helped write that one.
Well, he directed
and Harvey Bennett.
I believe on the hold up when they were discussing how they were some things that worked into that movie were connected to the Time After Time one that Meyer did, the Jack the Ripper versus H.G. Wells movie.
Oh, you're right. Nicholas Meyer was on the writing team
Cool.
for Star Trek 4. I'd forgotten that. Yeah. So, but he didn't direct that one. He directed. It was Leonard Nimoy directed that movie. So
yes,
yeah,
which led to Shatner having to do number 5. So.
Which, I think Shatner, wanted to prove he was just as good as Nimoy. It was a competitive thing, and it proved to be not as good.
Why does God need a starship?
Yeah, I think that movie gets panned a little harder than it deserves sometimes, but it's
you kind of like you wonder when movies like Star Trek movies become movies. The scope is so much bigger than what happens on a TV show, especially that time. I mean, now the budgets of TV shows are basically movies. Like you watch, I don't know, Wednesday or one of those shows, and it's like the budget of every episode is like $5 million or something. Like, and if you take that over this, being that they're using similar sets and stuff, if you take it over 10 episodes, they get like $50 million to make a TV show. That's quite a bit. That's actually probably an under analysis. I'm sure it's higher than that, but now you watch, like, even just seeing clips from like the CW Superman and Lois show. I just saw a clip of him like flying through punching a dude while flying through trees and like going into space. And like, I'm like, well, this is way bigger than any like Smallville or anything that they had when we were younger. You got like a watered down version. So now it's like, comparatively, you're like, well, back then it was such a drastic change to see, something like Wrath of Khan compared to what you saw in a Star Trek show. Even the first movie, which I'd have to go back and watch it, but I'm afraid to because I really didn't like it the first time I saw it.
Oh, the original, Star Trek 1? Oh, we did it. So like when we started the podcast years back, we went through, that was one of the first things we did. Like, let's go through all the movies. Each week we would watch a movie and talk about it. And of course we started with 1 and we're like, this was rough. Like this was not
the 15 minutes of just like circling the ship. I remember just sitting there and just going,
That's not even like, that's bad, but like, it's not even the most boring part. I don't think. Like there's a big part where they enter into like the cloud and like it's just like going on, and it's just the performances are very broody, I would say too.
Yeah, I agree. The second one, I felt like it felt the most human to me because I watched it again recently. My friend's a massive Star Trek fan, and it was his birthday last year. It was just his birthday, so it'll be exactly a year ago now. There was the big hurricane, and hardly anybody had power, but he did his place, and he was getting married that summer, so he didn't really have a party or do anything. So I said, I'll come over, and I brought his gifts, and we just watched. So watch whatever you want. Like, he's a big movie guy, so he picked Wrath of Khan because he had the 4K of it. So we watched it on his TV, and it surprised me because it's been so long since I've seen it, how like of a human story. Like Kirk seems to be the best acting I've ever seen out of Shatner, 100%. Like it's the most subdued he's ever been in a role, which has been the best that I've ever seen. And I haven't watched like Boston Legal or any of those shows that came later, so I don't know. But as far as like what I've seen of his work, that his role as Kirk in that was by far my favorite one I've ever seen him do. Because he was subdued, he was like getting older and he didn't really like it. And there's all these like really human things in there that I really liked, plus dealing with Spock's death when that part comes, and like in Khan and his son and all that revelation. Like it's all very like there's this story of legacy. Like Meyer is a really cool director, and it makes you want to go back and catch some of his other stuff. He wrote a very good, from what I understand, it's supposed to be a very good Sherlock Holmes book too.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, no, I agree with you though. I'm a big fan of that film too. And at the time, it was like they're getting old. I'm like, but looking back at it now, it's kind of silly because I'm like, he was. I think Shatner was just in his 50s by then, and it's not like he like of course Patrick Stewart didn't start playing Picard until he was like 48. So it was just like, you're not that old, man. Like it's.
Well, they're also like they're getting old in number 2, and then there's 4 more movies coming plus Generations, plus whenever some of them pop up on the Next Generation, or Deep Space Nine or any of the other ones further down the line. It's like, it's pretty funny. It's
you're
like,
washed up Kirk, get out of here.
But it does certainly make you feel old as getting older as time marches on, and now Picard is like the old man getting his own flower show to send him off. So
I just hit 40 this year, so now I'm
38 for me a couple of weeks ago, so or about a month ago now. So
yeah, my wife's like, "You're getting old." I'm like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Why is this her?" She's like, "You're old now. Get used to it."
How old's your wife?
She's 10 years older than me. So.
Oh, okay. Well, she has no frame. Well, maybe she's just happy that you're getting closer.
I think she's just more like, see, it's getting you too. So.
See, yeah, time comes for you as well.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly. Comes for all of us.
It's funny because I used to always like malign that sort of whenever people say, oh, you know, call someone a kid or start getting older. But now I find myself doing it. And I don't know what point that happened where I'm like, oh, you know, that kid that was at that thing. And then I'm like, oh, Jesus, you know, like it's starting.
Yeah. Oh, well, we have those moments frequently. Actually, I should also mention we had a Star Trek wedding, and we even did the I got this Batluff up here, and she had a matching one, and we did the Worf Jedzir ceremony.
An understanding wife.
Oh well, we got set up on a blind date because we were both Star Trek fans. That's how we met, and so so it wasn't that hard of a sell, really. Yeah,
that's awesome. So. What was like, did you, with your love of Star Trek and all this stuff growing up, were you like, did you have a community in rural Nova Scotia being a nerd? Because, you know,
I wasn't in Nova Scotia. So I left when I was a baby, but I mostly grew up in Montreal until I was, I don't know, about 13. Then I moved to Ontario
bilingual?
For high school. I'm not bilingual. But I was around them.
I'm sure the Quebec people loved you.
They did not
speak in English, you unilingual bastard.
I went to an English school, so it wasn't required all the time. And I left when I was 13, so it wasn't necessarily a problem, but it kind of was because that was the time of the referendum. And that was part of the reason my dad's job was there, and then we left after the referendum, because, as many companies did, just kind of not like.
Oh, really? What was your dad's job?
He worked for Zeller's head office, and so which had been based in Montreal for a long time. And when the referendum happened, a lot of companies were just like, you know what, let's get out of here, and they moved to Ontario or other places. So
I'm assuming your father's career in Zeller's ended a while before it closed down.
It did, yeah. He retired, and he was like, well, even after Zeller's had been sold off to, it technically wasn't sold to Target. They only sold the real estate leases, right. But he was working with the Bay stuff too, because HBC and Zeller's and Home Outfitters were all under one thing. So,
okay, cool. That's interesting.
So even after Zeller's went away, he was still working for the Bay for a number of years after that.
So I'm guessing it was easier to find a community of friends that were into the same nerdy shit you were in Toronto that would have been out this way. Yeah,
you know what? It was yes and no. There was a lot of Star Trek fans when I was a kid in Montreal. It was so popular. You know, I grew up during the golden age in some ways, right? Because, you know, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, into Enterprise.
Deep Space Nine was mine. That was the one that's when I really started watching Star Trek was on TV, was Deep Space Nine. And it's still my favorite to this day.
Yeah, and like I wasn't a fan in the first couple of years, and then when Worf came onto the show, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this more of a shot.
And Brian, was it enough for you?
No, not enough. You know, not initially.
I feel like you got to know him way better in Deep Space Nine than you ever did in Next Generation. Like I never watched all Next Generation. I have to go back and do that someday. But like I felt like O'Brien was just a tertiary character. Like you didn't really know much about him whenever I caught him on another episode. It was like he was in the conversation.
A little bit. They set him up a bit in like season 5. Like they introduced Keiko's wife, and there was and they had that backstory they did with the Rutledge and Captain Maxwell and the Cardassian Wars. Because I think they knew they wanted him to be part of the spinoff, and so they were also trying to get Michelle Forbes as Rolaren to go over to the spinoff, but she ultimately didn't go. So they created the Kira character. But
really? Why didn't she go?
Yeah. She just didn't want to do a series at the time, so.
That's a shame. I mean, Kira's great. I like her a lot, but
yeah. And I think they wanted those two to be the two that would switch over. But so like when Worf came over, because I was a Next Gen fan, and then he came over, I was like, oh, I love this show. And then that was when everything was blowing up with the Dominion War and all that stuff with the Klingons.
Season 3 is when it really hit its stride.
season 3 and 4, and I've been going through that process with my, we did the D Space Nine. We have one more season left to cover, and then we're going to finish that off, and then I think we're going to do Star Trek: The Next Generation as a rewatch podcast next.
Oh, cool.
Going through each episode, so you should join us for that when we get to that.
Sure, I probably should. A friend of mine is a big. I wonder if he's listening to you guys' shows. I did point him in your direction. The friend I mentioned earlier, he's a lawyer here in town, but he's a massive Star Trek fan. For his birthday that just was last Sunday, or it was actually Monday, but we had a thing for him Saturday. I gave him some gifts. He's big into war stuff too, like a Blu-ray set of that Laurence Olivier war documentary from the 70s and a few other things. But one of the things I got him was in the store in Truro here that's like it's kind of like a big flea market. Like people with special needs work there, and people just donate stuff all the time and they resell it. So it's kind of like a Value Village, but like on a smaller scale. But I was there one day and they had the Star Trek commemorative plates that came out like in the 90s that Paramount put out for like the 25th anniversary of the Next Generation, of the original series or something. Or maybe it was 40. I can't remember what the thing was, but it was like these they're like paintings of all of the cast of the original series, and they came with these little certificates of authenticity on them. So they had 3 of them there. It was like the Sulu one, the Chekhov one, and I think the Bones one. So I'm pretty
Portraits?
sure. Yeah, well, they're like really nice paintings. If you just look up commemorative Star Trek plates, you'd find them.
Oh, the plates. Okay,
Yeah.
of course I've seen the commemorative plates. They had a whole joke about that on Lower Decks with like Tom Paris.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
He's like, I got my Tom Paris commemorative plates.
Actually, that reminds me. I got to watch the new season of that. It started, right?
Yeah, we've already covered 4 episodes. So far. Yeah, it's been good. They have like an overarching plot this year, like an ominous threat.
Ooh,
that kind of a mystery.
I hope Boimler's evil teleportation clone his
William Boimler.
Yeah, that's right. Makes a return. I like
that's a theory.
Did you watch the documentary the What We Left Behind, the one about Deep Space Nine?
Yeah.
I went to the theater and saw that. They were playing it for like one day only in Halifax, and I was very excited. Nothing is sadder to me than how great a new series would have been when the writing room guys are sitting around and they just spitball what the first pilot episode would have been. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. The
hypothetical season 8.
Yeah, I know. I was like, my god, when they're like, like Julian would be in charge of Section 31. I was like, oh my god, this is so good. Like, it would have been so good.
Well, it's kind of incredible that Deep Space writers room had such depth, right? And a lot of those guys went on to do big shows, like Galactica. Of course Battlestar, and one of the guys went on to do Earth Final Conflict, and there was a bunch of different shows that
I call that a big show.
Well, I'd say the Battlestar is definitely the bigger one.
I'd say Battlestar surpassed Earth Final Conflict. I guess it had like 4 seasons, and I did watch it a lot as a kid, mostly because, like, as a nerd, when you were a kid at that point in history, your cup didn't runneth over when it came to like shows that were nerdy and cool and fun to watch. Like you had Earth, like a Star Trek. You had Star Trek, and that was on Earth Final Conflict, and like Kevin Sorbo's Hercules and Lucy Law's Xena show. I think
and Xena. I'm trying to think what else. I watched Babylon 5 a lot.
I didn't have. I only had like 2 channels, so I only got whatever CBC or ATV got.
Yeah, the other thing too, when I was in Montreal, if it was on TV and it was in English, I was probably going to watch it no matter what.
Right.
So, but like shows like Highlander and
I did watch. I did catch that on like my grandmother had cable, so I go visit her and she would. I'd watch it there.
Yeah, there were shows I could only watch when I visited my grandparents in Nova Scotia. Like there would be like Kung Fu: The Legend Continues. I was like, what is this?
I used to love that show.
Yeah, and it was always on ATV or Degrassi. I only really watched when I was in Nova Scotia. Yeah,
that's amazing because that was probably filmed in Toronto, isn't it? It must have been.
It was, but for whatever reason, I just wasn't exposed to it when I was a kid in Montreal. So I was like, oh, okay. And then this was on because half the channels were in French, of course, and so I didn't speak French, or I was trying, but I never really got there. So
school, I guess you said you took political science.
I did. I took that for 1 year at McMaster, and then I didn't really like the university scene, so I ended up going to a Sheridan College, which is a famous school that mostly for animation and things like that. But I took community outreach and development work. I originally trained as a community worker, learning about. I really liked the program because it was kind of different than like a social service worker program, but kind of a similar vibe. But it had more in nonprofit management and things like that. I think my original goal was like I want to be like the executive director of the United Way, or something along those lines.
That is a very not lofty, but that is a complicated goal for a young person to have in mind going into a career.
Yeah, it was. Well,
usually that's something you fall into eventually. It's not something as a kid you're like, I really want to be.
Well, I don't know if I fully understood the United Way part until maybe the second year of college, but I think I understood I wanted to work sort of in strategy and management and leadership or something along those lines.
Towards like causes that help people, or is it just?
Yeah, because I got into a volunteer work a lot in high school. When I was part of like a service club at the time called Civitan, which is similar to Lions Club or Kiwanis.
Oh, cool!
It's just a smaller club based in Alabama that mostly works on research for developmental disabilities. So when I was in that club in high school, like I went right up into the executive directors and all that kind of stuff, and I got really into just doing charity work and helping people and different causes. And so I was like, I think maybe I could do this for my career. And then I did the year McMaster, but it wasn't really for me, so I went to Sheridan instead, and I kind of like ran with that. But I ended up working all kinds of different things, events, special events, contests, and also charity work like fundraisers and charity events. And now I work with some of the big charities here in North America, mostly in direct mail and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's a good question because I didn't know what you did. So is that what you do now? Is that your job?
It's what I do now. So I used to be on the client side where I was managing the client and developing the creative for like, the different appeals to, but now I'm more on the back end. I get more of the production end of things done, created and executed. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah. So where I work for a firm that does work for the major charities on the continent. So across the States and Canada.
Very cool. Must be rewarding work. It's nice to be connected.
It is, and you get like, so we do all kinds of things for charity, like, health causes, but also even pet charities and environmental causes and all kinds of different things. It's also a great way to learn about what's happening in the world. International aid, those things I'm passionate about. And, it kind of really ties well into my values around Star Trek and helping people and giving back. And
that's super cool. Sometimes when I have these conversations, you like to try to find a way to tie together somebody's love of something or what they're known for to what, to just narratively, it makes a nice circle if there's some kind of connection. And then sometimes your guest just does it all for you very easily and succinctly in one sentence, which is perfect.
Voila.
Voila, that's right.
Here's my French for you. I am bilingual, I guess.
That's awesome. Oh, super cool. Yeah, obviously I do professional wrestling stuff. I do it here. I do a lot. Some of the stuff I do through the parts of it that I run are fundraisers for the SPCA. I'm a big animal guy, so
yeah. I see you're a big pet lover.
Yes, I have 3 cats.
All that.
I had 4 at one point, and then we lost 2, and then we're back up to 3. We got a new one not too long ago. So
we have 2 here. Spot and Jaden.
Of course,
name for Star Trek.
You can always tell what, like, the cats are all pretty much named by me because, like, when I met my wife, she had Presley, who was named already. That
Elvis.
She had like a white bit on her lip that kind of looked like a sneer, which is why the people she got her from named her that. Then we found a stray living under the shed behind her old apartment when we started dating, and I named him Klaatu because I'm a big fan of The Day the Earth Stood Still. That's the alien from that. The original, not the Keanu Reeves one. I mean, that one's okay, but the original one is so good. And then we got Lebowski, who I found as a kitten on the side of the road. And obviously I'm a fan of that movie. And then Sheba, who was just kind of because she had kittens and was sort of a queen. But then the new one is Ripley, because when we got her from the vet, her name was Presley already. And we thought it was weird because Presley and Klaatu both died. Presley died in late November, and then Klaatu not too long after that. It was really like a gut punch to have to do that, like within months of the previous ones. It just sucks so much. So when I was doing a drop-in check or something off at the SPCA, I was just looking at the cats, and there's this one kitten named Presley already that I thought was, well, that's kind of fortuitous. And and yeah, we gotta take her home. We renamed her Ripley because of aliens. So
Yeah, that's all right. Well, hey, it can get worse because my wife's aunt, she got a new cat and it was already named Jax, and my wife was so excited. Oh, it's Jax, cute Jax. But then her aunt renamed it Snugglebug, and my wife hates it. So it's just like Snugglebug. That's not a name for a cat. Like
Jax is
that's
a
a
cool
nickname.
name.
Jax is a cool name. She
It's
gets
like
it.
going from like a super badass name to like just like the most ridiculous. It's like this is
Yeah, pretty much.
like Monstar, the Destroyer of Worlds. We're gonna call him Leslie now.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
that's how it goes. But yeah, when I met my wife, she already had the two cats, both named for Star Trek, and I was like, I have to marry this woman. So,
And you must have had you have an adult son. Like you must have had him fairly early on in life.
yeah, he was born the kind of like first year of Sheridan.
Oh wow,
So I was 19 at the time,
wow,
and yeah, so that accelerated things.
yeah,
Um, in terms of like, I need to get a job, I need to really get going. It really helped in some ways, I think, in my 20s, just to keep me sort of focused on the work. And that I was working downtown Toronto, like doing the commute, and it's a grind and
yeah,
expensive.
man. Yeah, I can
um
imagine. Plus childcare and everything else, right? Like,
Childcare, go train, all those things add up, and so looking back on it, I'm glad I kind of was forced to, I don't know, really just keep to it through those years, although it was hard at the time. And
is he
hopefully.
like now that you've sort of? I guess we can get to the creation of this network that we were a part of, that you've come to grow. As your son has a show on here as well. Um,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
was that something you got him to get involved with, or is he just a music head and wanted to get involved with it that way, or is there?
A bit of both, like, so I started the Trivial Debates podcast, which you've been on before, I believe,
Twice. No.
twice now.
Yes, twice. Yeah, twice.
Right. So
One I
when I
was
started,
woefully late for, and then one I actually was here promptly on time.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes.
So when I started that show, like, Eamon often would sub in. At the time, Eamon was only a kid, I guess 12 or something like that. And he loved it. He loved to be on the podcast, just be around the podcast. So he was always into that kind of stuff. And then he did do his own little podcast about fighting video games for a little while.
Cool.
But when he said, I want to start like a music podcast or something, I was like, well, why don't you come in with us and join this federation of podcasts that I'm building? And so that's kind of, so it's yeah, definitely something he wanted to do anyway. But I think we both had a passion for it for many years.
Yeah, that's one I wouldn't mind being on someday. As what
Yeah.
I understand is the guest just picks an album and then they talk about it the whole show. Is that
Right. Yeah. You just pick
right?
an album, whether Eamon has listened to it before or not, or is familiar with it or not. And they go through all the tracks and and then talk about the album. And there's a rating section, kind of like what we do on our other shows.
Cool.
And, it's been interesting to kind of expose him to music he wouldn't otherwise maybe listen to, so
Yeah, no, that sounds super cool. I
Murphy
feel
went on there.
I could go super esoteric, or I could go super I wouldn't say I guess I could go modern. There's some modern stuff I like, but I've recently been into I've been raving about. Have you ever heard of Mort Garson? I think his name was.
I can't say I have.
So in the 70s, he was a Canadian composer who was well known for being sort of an innovator of electronic music. Like his album. So back in like whenever, I'm not sure how this came about. I have to look it up, but he did a album for Sears that was called Plantasia. So it was it was designed to be played to plants to help them grow better, and it's just electronic music. But as an album, it's fantastic. Like it's some of the most. If I'm having a bad day, I can put that album on, and it makes me happy instantly. It's just it's just such an interesting, fun. Like they have like all the songs are named after plants and stuff, and like it's just very very chill, cool. And they just re-released it on vinyl. I collect records, so I was at a record store in the town I was wrestling in, and a dude picked it out of the bin and looked at it, and I was like, oh, I'm waiting for him to put it back down so I could grab it and buy it. But I guess recently, because people have found this album and reevaluated this guy, a lot of his other stuff has been coming out in subsequent albums of other things he did, and it's all
been
super
discovered
cool.
late.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, he passed away years ago, but his music is it's just fantastic. It's beautiful stuff, and
Well, yeah, and so something like that would probably be right up his alley. Because Murphy went on and he talked about the Proto Men, and one of
the
their
Mega
like
Man.
their
Oh, the Mega, yeah, because they're
like it's
named
like a
after
Mega
them.
Man
Yeah.
theory series thing.
Yeah.
And so even for me, I wasn't even on the episode, but I started listening to it too, and I was like, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
So it's just a way to kind of expose, kind of like the movie podcast or the music, or whatever. We're kind of pulling different people in, having interesting conversations, and getting to know people. I think is the best part of this process that I really like. It's
So, what was the
just
impetus for you with getting into podcasts? Like, where did that begin?
I'd say I really started thinking about it when I was listening to Kevin Smith's podcasts, because I'm a big fan of his movies, and he was doing Smodcast around 2009 and 2010. So I started listening to those episodes, and I started a podcast with somebody at the time, and we did something similar for a few years. We ended up shelving that eventually, but that was kind of where I got inspired. Kevin was doing all those different shows, and I got pulled. We did. I play in like this hockey league that Kevin kind of started, because Kevin was like wanted to go to Brantford, Ontario, and play in the street hockey tournament up there. So he did, and so I was listening to the podcast. I mean, you're going to Brantford, which is like half an hour away from me. So I was like, okay, and then I kind of went down there, and I was like, do you guys know I have a podcast? And they were like, who are you? And so it was kind of my introduction to that world with that fan community, I guess. Getting in with the Kevin Smith fans who specifically like hockey. And so it was.
No, that's an interesting Venn diagram there. I would say it's a lot of overlap, kind of, but sort of. Like, nerds aren't well known for being super. There are many that are super into sports, but relatively, it's not like it's like Quidditch or wrestling or something like that.
Yeah, well, most Kevin Smith fans, I would say, are not athletic, but some are.
I am.
I am, and my brother and whatever. So we would go down, but yeah, like it was everybody was kind of coming from everywhere, and so doing that. That led into a whole bunch of other podcasts. Jameel, of course, I met him there. He was in the Kevin Smith hockey before I was, and so we met there, and then we started talking Star Trek, and then we decided to Live Long and podcast together. Along the way. So that was kind of a good way of, I guess, how I got into it. So I think Kevin Smith was probably my number one inspiration, even though I haven't listened to one of his shows in a long time. But the other person I would say was a huge influence was a podcaster called Rob Cisternino, who Rob Has a Podcast, it's called.
Oh, yes, I have heard of that. I never listened to it, but yeah.
He's mostly a Survivor podcaster, and but he does Big Brother and some other stuff like that. And so when Jeff and I, my brother, we started Super Mater Brothers, we kind of wanted to do something a little bit similar. Talking about the episodes we just watched. We'll do one tonight for Survivor's premiere. Right. So it's kind of like, but Rob is a much bigger podcaster than we are, but it's that was another interesting thing, because it's kind of like a craft. It's kind of like I think I'm not a musician per se, but like I kind of think it's sort of similar, where you have like this kinship with the fellow podcasters.
As I've been doing it, just this one and then the one with Davin too, but you can, and even just listening to a lot of them, because you're kind of like, well, like anybody can just sit here and talk, but whether they're witty or what they have to bring to a conversation is interesting is kind of the difference. But even just, I think you got to hit that knack of finding the topic that the fans that are going to find you for, right? Like if it's something that you're passionate about and you're into it. I mean, I could listen to podcasts about horror movies all day, even if they're not quite as, or movies in general. Like, I just blew right through the Tarantino one that him and Roger Avery are doing together. Season 1 ended a while ago, but I will listen to the whole thing in like a month. And, because it's so easy. You're driving somewhere, you're mowing the lawn, you're doing dishes, making meals. Like you just, pop them in. And...
Yeah, there's an art to it. I think that letting your personality shine on the show is really important. I when I think back to what did I really like about Kevin on Smodcast or Rob on his podcast, and it's just like trying to be as charismatic as possible, because that's easier said than done. And being engaging and enthusiastic, you know, I think is a huge part of that. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, you know. Like I've been podcasting weekly now, like since the pandemic. That's when we really ramped things up, and I definitely know I'm stronger at it than when I started. So or even especially compared to when I did that first podcast in like 2010, where I remember we were just like, what do I say now? What do you say now? I don't know how this works, you know? So you just kind of have to jump into it. I think it's like, again, compared to music, which I don't do, but I imagine, you know, the more you play that guitar, mess around with it, you know, the more you'll start to get better. You know, the more you keep at it, like anything, 10,000 hours makes you an expert. So I'm trying to get to that point.
Well, yeah, so you're doing a good job. You certainly have a lot of shows under your umbrella now, so that's pretty great.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm glad I met you and Davin and Murphy and others, you know, because it's great to have people who are equally passionate about it. You know, like I'd say that Davin and I certainly can definitely have that like just want to do it for the sheer love of it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's so we just keep going, making it our passion project. You know, and that's great for me. You know, I just like how I get so much out of that Kevin Smith group or whatever. I just really like doing stuff with people. So even though I'm technically work from home, I don't go out and see people as much as maybe I once did, but I feel like I'm always trying to keep in touch with people. And then when I lose touch with those people, I'm like, come on the show, come on and talk to me about this or that.
Well, I feel like that's people don't. It's pretty easy to get caught up in the vitriol of the internet, but I think every once in a while it's nice to remind us about some of the good things it's brought. Like think about if COVID had happened before we had Zoom and like streaming services and all these other things. Like if you couldn't, all the things that you can do at your home now to stay connected to people in your life that you never would have had, even 10, 15 years ago. Like if COVID had happened in the 90s, like what would life have been like then? It would have been insane.
I think we would have seen a lot more domestic violence calls and different.
Yeah, you would have just you would have had to listen to the news to get to get your updates once a day about whatever your things were rolling out that you had to follow or any of that stuff. And but I mean, it's a double-edged sword. There's lots of terror. I always say that back in the day, if you were a shitty person in your community, you were sort of ostracized for having backwards values. Maybe you consider changing them. But now you can find a community online that believes whatever crazy shit you believe and feel validated by them. And maybe you'd be less likely to give up those. But I mean, those people generally would just create an echo chamber anyway. But now it's so much easier with other voices joining in.
Well, it's true. There is that double-edged sword. So, if I found a community, but also bad people can also find
100%.
communities.
You're like a crazy racist. You're like, well, here's a bunch of people that agree with me, so I must be right.
Yeah. See, look at this. I found 10 more. I found all these people. Yeah, but you're spread out. Like you're one in every town.
Yeah,
maybe.
But they found each other.
So they found each other. So now they're strong in numbers. Yeah, it's true.
Awesome. So, is there what's do you have a goal in sight for the Federation, or is it just making content, having fun?
I think the ultimate goal would be, can we do this on some kind how can we make it successful enough to put as much time into it as we want to, which is probably more full time.
That would be amazing.
I feel like with Davin, he would love to make it, his full-time gig. And I personally don't mind having a day job as well, just to, kind of have something different to look at too. But I think just grow it, be more successful, be more into the community. Like I see the success you guys are doing with the the X-Men podcast and getting the creators, writers, actors from that show involved. And I would like to do something similar with our shows, but just creating entertaining podcasts that people enjoy, I think is mostly what motivates me. I just want I'd like to have an audience and sort of get better at it.
I'd like to find the time to be able to do it more. Like I would love to do an esoteric horror movie podcast, or even just cult movie podcast, like weird old movies and stuff. That would be a dream come true for me.
Well, you should talk to Alex and to Michael, trying to get onto their show too, right? Because they got the Hellbound podcast.
Yeah, but they haven't, I noticed on my thing they haven't put anything out since like May. Are they still going, or are they just?
I think they're back. I think
okay.
they're back right now, but I have to check.
I guess like Michael's Chan's in like a YTV show, so imagine he's probably busy.
He is in a YTV show. That's right, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when he's
one, from what I understand.
Popularity Papers.
Yeah, that's right in the title.
Right.
So something like that. But I guess one question I want to ask you before he goes: what's the fascination with reality television? Because this is something that I've never. And like, I'm not, no judgments. I'm happy. Like I'm very much, especially in my later years. I mentioned earlier that I've been like nobody should make anybody feel bad for liking something, assuming it's a good thing. But it's like, I love murder. Okay, maybe you shouldn't like that. But like,
right.
If it makes you happy, to quote Sheryl Crow, it can't be that bad. So, yeah. What's your like? What I'm trying to find an end to reality television through your love of it. Something.
Yeah, well, you're not the only one who has posed this question to me and people I know, because especially within the Federation podcasters, Davin and
Davin, I can't imagine Davin likes any reality TV show.
He does not.
He doesn't like anything that came out before 1990.
No, not really. I like competition reality shows, and more specifically Survivor and Big Brother. I don't watch like shows like 90 Day Fiance and these kinds of things. Okay. Again, no judgment. It's just not my style. But with Survivor, I think there's something about, and Big Brother, it's kind of the same thing, but I was a Survivor fan first. It's the social experiment of it. Every time you throw a new group of cast members together, I think that you get a new combinations, and I have an interest in people, I guess, deeply, like whether it be on a podcast or not. And so I like kind of seeing that them adapt to that situation of in Survivor's case, you're stranded on an island, you're trying to run on fewer calories, and can you win $1 million? It's kind of like sports to me a little bit too, because we're up to 45 seasons of Survivor, and it's
I watched the first couple when I was in high school.
Yeah, and so when you look at like back at this whole history of it, and like all the seasons that came, all the players that came, you can kind of really start to get into this the nuanced tactics of what it takes to win. And I think on some level I would love to be on one of these shows, so I think I'm always kind of studying it for that. Could I be on Survivor one day? Could I be on Big Brother
Canada once, but I did not.
I'm thinking about auditioning again this year, but I keep going like how I'm gonna I can never get on to how I'm going to sell myself to them.
I was so sure I would have got at least a second call back, because it seemed like I was like exactly what they're looking for based on what they were saying. So, because I went into it with like, I felt like what hurt me was that I didn't watch the show, because they had like questions about, they said that you don't need to watch the show when you apply, but then when you're in the process, they have questions about what do you think that like Bill did on the episode last night. And I'm like, but they
depends what category they want to put you in.
Yeah, I suppose so. What I felt like I leaned into was just being the antagonist in a sense. Like there's this one girl that was like the super ditzy, like airheady type. I don't know if she was playing up a role too, but she was like just that sort of thing. And then she was like, they're like, what kind of people don't like, she had a whole speech. She's like, I just like to like cause drama sometimes, see what people do, and like blah blah blah. And then they're like, okay. And then they go, Andre, what kind of people don't you like? I'm like, those people, that one right there. Went right at her, and I was like, and then like at the end they had a little group, because they put like 5 people in a group and then sort of make like a mini with questions to get your personalities. And then they were like, at the end they were like, they asked who everyone would vote out, and they all voted me. So I was like, well, that's good. I feel like one person's like, well, for physical challenges, I feel like he would be a challenge. And that was one of the reasons someone did. And the other one said that like they felt like I would be, a tough competitor and some other things. So I was like, well, this all seems like it's going in my favor. But I think
it was, if I had to speculate about it, it was probably because they had someone in your archetype that they wanted to use instead. Because the guy who won a couple seasons ago, Kevin Jacobs, he was kind of like a misanthrope kind of a character. He's like, I don't like all these people. I'm going to be the schemer. He ends up winning the season, and so I think that it could have been like, we got 2 similar guys and they might have just went with him, if you
Yeah.
were
I
in the
did
same
have an
audition
audition
process.
for what's this one, the Battle of the Generations, that was on CBC, where it was like millennials versus, it was like a game show, millennials versus boomers
Yeah.
versus Gen Xers. So unfortunately I didn't get it on the show, but a friend of mine from PEI who's also a professional wrestler did. So I'm assuming he, because I felt like the wrestling thing was my in. They were very interested in that, and then but he's a much younger, prettier looking wrestler than I am, so I'm assuming that was part of their draw.
Well, I think that is part of the casting.
Yeah.
It's not a must to have or have to have, but I think it doesn't hurt.
No.
And with the people who don't tend to be fans of the show, I guess, of like in Big Brother's case, they tend to what we call recruits, and they typically are like an Instagram model or somebody like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. No,
And
I get that. I
so
can see that as like looking at the human drama of stuff, because it's kind of like the Satra play No Exit, like, hell is other people. If you just put all these people in a house together and they can't escape, eventually the drama is just going to start. And
yeah, no phones,
yeah,
nobody telling them how to feel or how to react to things,
yeah,
how that like game of telephone gets misconstrued. That's the part about those shows I enjoy, and seeing, and then rooting for whoever I want to win, so I usually attach myself to somebody. We do a draft with our friends, and in our podcast group specific to that show every season, and then we kind of root on our guy or girl.
I like that it's sort of like, it's the same, like literally what you're describing is what sports fans do. Like you're literally describing what a Maple Leafs fan would probably tell you they enjoy about the season, right? Like, you got your favorite players and you want your team to win. So it's interesting. I can see the mentality of that going that way around. So
yeah, it's very sports, and like I do it with my brother Jeff, the Super Mater Brothers podcast, which Jeff's a much bigger sports guy than I am, and so he got me into Big Brother in the first place. So when we watch those seasons, I'm always like, "What do you think, Jeff?" He's like, "It's not as good as season 2 with Dr. Will." It just never could hold up to that for him, right? So
that's his golden season. Wow.
It's like saying that they'll never be as good as Wayne Gretzky. It's
well, that's good. I love that. That guy's probably like, who knows where that guy is now, right? Like the dude, the one that's
Dr. Will. Well, he's the legend. He's the god. Like,
don't they have like seasons where they bring back people that were popular from the show and do it
they
again?
do, yeah. But he's famously one of the people who never has agreed to come back.
Really? Is he holding out for money, or is he just doesn't want to do it?
He just doesn't want to do it. I don't think he wants to tarnish his reputation as one of the best. So he comes back and he'll do like a segment where he'll host like a jury panel where he's like, you should vote for the best winner, not who you're bitter against. And he kind of does that shtick every couple years. But they can never seem to get him to agree to a season.
Yeah, that's the argument of the person that is really unlikable. You're like, it shouldn't be a popularity contest because I definitely wouldn't win. You should judge on, who's the, who is the strongest player or whatever. That's
right. He kind of they bring him in to like reprogram the jury every couple seasons.
Remember, it's a game. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's a game, and you're not supposed to be bitter, and you're supposed to vote for the best winner. And then they go, okay, and then they do. So,
but it's funny because like you can't disassociate in that situation between those sort of things, because like personality has to play into it. How you treat other people has to play into it. It's human nature. You can't put someone in a situation and tell them to be completely dispassionate. If you see two people in a sporting event, one's a complete asshole, one's a nice guy, but the night and the asshole is doing better, you're still gonna, physically in the sport, like maybe winning more points or whatever.
It's also about who you want to represent you a little bit too. On any given season, like there might be somebody who's technically the better player or was the better person to watch on TV, but the jury goes, but I don't want to say I was on that season of Survivor and that guy won. He's a jerk. I don't like him. So like, Russell Hand's probably been the most famous example of this. Somebody who got to the finals twice, but he had burned every bridge with them. He had made them look stupid, and so when he got to the end, they gave it to whoever. They didn't care. They don't like anybody but you. Even if they deserve to be there or not.
Yeah, that is interesting because they do really posit it as a you're not here to make friends, you're here to win a game. But in the end, it kind of relates to if you made friends to get you to the winner's circle, because
they have to be willing to give you this money, right? Because then the power shifts to them, and if they're if you do it badly enough, then that's why I get into with my brother all the time. I'm like, they don't deserve to win because they knew they would have to get them to vote for them and they didn't care. So that's what happened, right?
Well, you may have sold me on it a little bit. I can see some of the value of the show. It does sound. I don't know if
It's
I
not
could
so
watch.
bad.
I like I don't know if I could be one of those people that could watch, the hours and hours of backstage stuff where it's just like, it's like feeds that you can watch all the time. I'm walking around the house and staring
I
at
can't do it.
bookshelves. And no,
I can't do the feeds. I like Jamil updates me on what's happening with the feeds, but I'm just like,
Mr. Meal watch them all. My God.
oh, he keeps up with it all, and I actually think it's bad for Big Brother in some ways because like the people who watch the live feeds and are into it, they scrutinize these house guests to a ridiculous level. It's just like they're like, well, I don't like this person because of the way they speak to this person, or da 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 da, and I'm just like, I don't know if I need to like, I don't. Who are the good people and who are the bad people, I guess, is what that particular part of the fan base is doing. And for people who are just watching it on TV, which is, Big Brother's case, 3 times a week, you get an edited version of this, and there's always like this kind of push and pull. Well, that's not representative of what really happened, and whatever. And I'm like, I don't even want to know what really happened. Then I just want to just show me on the show, and I'll just watch the episodes, and that's ultimately what's going to live in sort of the long term.
Well, that's interesting. So you're happy with the fabricated version of reality that you're getting in the show?
A bit. I'm okay with Jamil explaining to me what the reality of it is, but I don't want to be hung up on that, I guess, so much,
Fair enough.
Because
it's kind of like wanting to enjoy a show and not see all the backstage, talking
a little bit.
Like
I
dramas happening between two actors versus just watching the show that comes out of it.
Well, that's kind of the interesting discourse we get on our podcast with that. Is just that, like, I'm like, oh, I'm really enjoying this person on the show, and Jamil goes, oh, but if you knew this, you wouldn't, and like, so he started, and then he tells me, and I'm like, I don't know if I changed my mind that much about it. So it just depends. But
Jamil's the moral, he's standing atop the moral high ground.
Well, he's kind of also just parroting a little bit what he's hearing from the live feed community, I think, too, right? Which can be a bit scrutinous. So
very passionate fan base, that's for sure.
It is, for sure.
Cool.
So that's why I do those, and I just like the diversity of topics. That's why I love doing the Federation podcast, because whether it be music or movies or X-Men or Star Trek, we kind of jump all around for the love of it and talk about a whole bunch of different things, because I do love different things, and I think we're even trying to get sports going, down the road, so that we can
skip me on that one. I definitely would. Unless about wrestling, I'm terrible. I hosted trivia night weekly at one location here in Truro, and then monthly at another place in Stewiacke, which is 15 minutes down the road. And I rarely do. Whenever I do the weekly one, they every time I ask a sports question, like, I don't usually do sports rounds. It's very rare. But if there's a sports question, they tint their glasses and make little, like, because like it's so rare that it's like they have to celebrate when a sports question comes up. So,
right.
It's just never been my bag. I mean, I enjoy playing sports. I play baseball and all that sort of stuff, but I just don't. And volleyball and basketball.
My dad is a sports fanatic.
Yeah.
He was talking the other day about a baseball game he went to in 1982. He knows who the starting pitchers were. He knows all this detail. Like, how do you know all that? Like, there's no way I would ever think of any of that, right? So, and Jeff's a little closer to that kind of guy. But I like a game. I like a hockey pool or whatever.
Yeah, I would go to watch a baseball game or whatever. Like, if someone invited me, I would go to see a Jays game or something. I've never been. I would go. It's a good experience. Why not, right? Yeah. But I wouldn't probably buy a season pass and go all year.
No. Like, my wife's like, I'm so glad you don't like sports as much as your dad. So it's well, I guess that's something.
That's something. That's it. I'm not going to become my father. I think it's the best thing.
Yeah, not quite.
Possibly learn. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I assume we have to get limber for the do some stretches and get ready for the.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's now these episodes are now going to 90 minutes. This is the first season where Survivor's not going to be an hour; it's going to be an hour and a half per episode. Wow. So that's a whole new thing we got to get used to. And then we'll come on and podcast about it after. But hey, it's been awesome getting to talk to you and get to know you. This is mostly why I wanted to do this.
Good excuse. I'll take the excuse as well. And for sure, if you ever need, I know Davin's always trying to recruit me for other things too, and I try. I'm a very busy person, so it's hard. Like, I want to do the horror one, but I'm on vacation when he's doing it, and so I can't do that one, unfortunately, for the trivial debates. But
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, hey, you can always pass and come on the next one, right? So we'll definitely keep
Yeah, or
circulating
I wouldn't
around.
mind popping on a Star Trek one sometime if you guys are doing
Sure.
one of those.
Absolutely.
I am an actor, so if you guys ever want to do one of those readings,
We're going to do a radio theater. You haven't done that yet, right?
no. But
I haven't done what.
I am in the union, so I'd have to charge you union rates. So I'm kidding.
Oh,
I'm totally kidding.
oh, get actor out of here.
I'm kidding. Yeah, so I'll get my actor card out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did one day of extra work for the boys. It's coming out.
Oh, what? That'd be actually a friend of mine did background. Was there an English guy on set when you were there doing background?
Maybe.
Paul Sutton.
There was this one guy I hung out with the whole day. He wasn't. I can't remember his name now, but yeah,
we were. I met same thing on the show From that they film here in Nova Scotia. It's a horror show on Paramount with the guy from Lost in it. Harold Perrineau. He was on
Harold Perrineau, yeah, from Oz.
Yeah, oh, he was on Oz too. Yeah, right. And The Matrix, the first one, I think, or the second one.
Second one.
But yeah, he's super nice guy. But yeah, I did background on that for a bunch of times last year. When you're in the union, background pays well, so it's worth doing. But generally, I find it's kind of a hit or miss. But they, so I'm just in season 2. I'm in the background a bunch, and this guy I met on it, Paul, older English chap. We got along like gangbusters. So he moved back to Toronto, and he's telling me he's been doing background for the boys and stuff. So.
Yeah, no, it was a fun day. Like I would do it more often if I could. Yeah, but it was a cool experience. I got to see this Homelander speech over and over and over again. So
that's pretty awesome.
Episode 3, I think, for the next season. So.
Oh, really? Sweet. All right, I'll keep an eye out. All right, on. We'll enjoy the new episode, and I'm sure I'll be catching up with you somewhere down the line.
Thank you, Andre. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Dave. It's been a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye. There it is, my conversation with Dave Mader. Great talk, great conversation. And he actually did give me some insight into why there might be some redeeming qualities of reality television. I may have to, at some point in my career, pick that up again and watch an episode or two. Not looking super forward to it. But, if you're using it as a study of human behavior, and I know it's not exactly that. We do talk about the manufactured sort of reality that comes from reality television. But, as a show that does certainly put human behavior and interaction in the forefront, I can see the draw. I can see why people would like it. Whether it's going to change things for me or turn things around, I don't know. But his passion certainly is understandable. So very happy to have Dave on. Great conversation, and I'm glad to get to know him better. Hopefully I'll get to collaborate with him more in future podcast stuff as part of this network. And I hope his dreams become a reality, that this can be, a full-time job for all of us someday. Because I love doing this sort of stuff. I love talking, I love chatting, I love being passionate about the things that I love. And there's a lot of them, so, I'm on board for all that sort of stuff. So, all right, well, I told you I was going to have a secret, not a secret, but that I would reveal who my guest is for the next episode. And here it is. His name is Stephen Gordon. Stephen Gordon was an illustrator, animator. He's worked on Wolverine and the X-Men. Also, most notably, he worked for Ralph Bakshi on his Lord of the Rings series, the animated one that came out in the 70s, as well as his American Pop series, or movie, his Fire and Ice movie. That American Pop movie, I watched when I was young. It was for rent at a store down the road from me. VHS tape that I picked up and watched, and because it was animated, I was excited. I like cartoons, and it's like heavy metal sort of in a way that it's not animated for children. But I think I saw it too young, but I loved it, and it really stuck with me in a way that I still think about every once in a while. And meaning, I think I'm going to go back and rewatch it before I have my conversation with Stephen. I don't have a lot of time because I'm trying to get ready for my trip. But if I do, I'm definitely going to check that out because it's a very interesting movie that kind of uses music to study the history of America, through wars and shifting cultural expectations and all that sort of thing. It's very interesting. But yeah, I'm super excited to talk to Stephen and get him on the show. So he was my next guest. And that'll be in 2 weeks' time. I will still be on vacation, I think, when it airs, or just getting back. So I will be filling you in on how things are in the episode after that, or how it all went. Hopefully I made it back okay. But in the meantime, you got 2 weeks to convalesce and be back here for my conversation with Stephen Gordon. And I will see you then. And by see, I mean hear, talk. I will speak to you then. You won't be seeing anybody. This isn't not a visual medium. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.